Everyone thinks Vecna became the villain of Stranger Things in Season 4. And honestly, that's exactly what Netflix wanted you to believe. Because if Vecna really appeared in Season 4, then explain something. Why was the Upside Down frozen on the day Will Byers disappeared? Why did Stranger Things keep showing clocks years before anyone knew who Henry Creel was? And why did Will spend 4 seasons acting like something was still watching him, even after every monster had supposedly been defeated? At first, these felt like random mysteries, but after Season 4, they started feeling like clues. Because maybe Vecna wasn't introduced in Season 4. Maybe he was hiding in plain sight from the very beginning. And if that's true, then one of Netflix's biggest twists wasn't a twist at all. It was a secret we were never supposed to notice. Stranger Things lied to us for 3 seasons. For years, we thought we understood Stranger Things. Season 1 had the Demogorgon, Season 2 had the Mind Flayer, Season 3 had the Meat Monster, and Season 4 introduced Vecna. Simple. Every season. New villain. New threat. Case closed. Except, that's not how great stories work. And it's definitely not how the Duffer Brothers write. Because the biggest trick Stranger Things ever pulled was convincing us that these creatures were separate. Think about it. The Demogorgon acted like an animal. The Mind Flayer never spoke. The monsters didn't have emotions. They didn't hate. They didn't seek revenge. But Vecna hated humanity. He remembered pain. He manipulated trauma. He understood fear. Because unlike the monsters, Vecna wasn't just a creature. He was a person. And suddenly, everything changed. Because if Vecna was controlling everything, then maybe the Demogorgon wasn't the villain. Maybe it was just the weapon. And weapons don't start wars. Someone controls them. Which means, while we spent years fearing monsters, we never stopped to ask who was holding the strings. Will Byers was never a random victim. Go back to Season 1. Will Byers disappears. At first, it looks like a normal horror story. Kid disappears. Family panics. Monster attacks. But then something strange happens. Will survives. And not just for a few hours. He survives far longer than anyone expected. Barb died quickly. Other victims died quickly. But Will somehow stayed alive. Why? And here's an even bigger question. Why was Will still connected years later? Season 2, Season 3, Season 4. Every time danger returned, Will could feel it. That feeling in the back of his neck, that strange sensation, almost like something never left him, almost like something marked him. At the time, everyone blamed the Mind Flayer. But after Season 4, that explanation suddenly feels incomplete, because Vecna doesn't simply kill, he connects. He enters minds. He stays. And maybe, Will wasn't just the first victim. Maybe he was the first person Vecna chose. The most important mystery, nobody talked about. By Season 4, fans had hundreds of theories. But one mystery stood above everything else. Why was the Upside Down frozen in time? Nancy discovers something terrifying. Nothing changed after November 6, 1983. Not her diary, not the decorations, nothing. It was as if time itself had stopped. And strangely enough, time has always been connected to Vecna. Clocks, ticking sounds, grandfather clocks, distorted time. At first they looked like creepy horror effects, but after Season 4, those clocks became something else. Warnings, because every victim hears the clock before death. And suddenly, Stranger Things wasn't just about monsters anymore. It became a story about time itself. Chapter 4, the clocks were never random. By the time Season 4 arrived, fans finally noticed something strange. Every victim heard a clock. Max heard it. Chrissy heard it. Fred heard it. Patrick heard it. And eventually, everyone connected the clocks to Vecna. But here's the terrifying part. Stranger Things had been obsessed with time long before Season 4. Think about it. The Upside Down itself is frozen in time. Will Byers was trapped in another dimension while time stood still. And somehow, every major mystery in the show keeps leading back to one thing, time, which makes you wonder, were the clocks really just part of Vecna's powers? Or were they always trying to tell us something deeper? Because Vecna doesn't simply kill people, he makes them relive memories, trauma, regret, pain, almost like he's forcing his victims to become trapped in the past. And suddenly, those grandfather clocks stop feeling like horror props. They start feeling like symbols. Symbols of people who can never escape their worst moments. Because maybe, Vecna doesn't feed on fear. Maybe he feeds on memories. The Mind Flayer was hiding the truth. For years, everyone thought the Mind Flayer was the king, the ruler of the Upside Down, the ultimate evil, and honestly, that's exactly what the show wanted us to think, because giant monsters are easy to fear. But humans are complicated. Season 2 gave us the Shadow Monster. Season 3 gave us the Meat Monster. Everything pointed toward the Mind Flayer. Until Season 4 changed everything. Because according to Henry Creel, the Mind Flayer wasn't something he obeyed, it was something he shaped. Something he transformed, which means, all those years, while we were focused on giant monsters, the real villain was standing behind them, hidden, watching, waiting. And that's what makes Vecna terrifying. Not because he's powerful, but because he understands people. He understands loneliness, pain, trauma, and hatred. Because unlike the Demogorgon, Vecna was once human, and humans are far scarier than monsters. Chapter 6. 11 and Vecna are mirror images. Maybe the most tragic thing about Stranger Things is that 11 and Vecna aren't opposites. They're reflections. Both were children with extraordinary powers. Both were treated differently. Both experienced loneliness. Both wanted to escape. But somewhere along the way, they made different choices. Henry looked at humanity and saw family. Henry chose control. 11 chose love. And maybe that's why their battle feels so emotional. Because deep down, 11 isn't fighting a monster. She's fighting someone she could have become. And Vecna isn't trying to destroy 11. He's trying to prove that she's just like him. Because nothing terrifies us more than seeing ourselves inside the villain. Season 5 might change everything again. But here's where things become truly disturbing. Because what if Vecna himself isn't the beginning? What if Henry Creel wasn't the first evil? Recent clues suggest something terrifying. Something older. Something far more ancient. Because when Henry entered the Upside Down, he discovered the black particles. The same particles that would eventually become the Mind Flayer. But what if those particles existed before Henry? What if something was already there? Waiting, watching, searching for someone broken enough to turn into a monster. Which means Henry Creel may not have created evil. He may have found it. Or worse, evil may have found him. And if that's true, then Season 4 wasn't the end of the mystery. It was only the beginning. Neath is hidden inside every mystery, every clock, every strange feeling Will Byers experienced, every unanswered question. And maybe that's why Stranger Things feels different from other shows. Because great villains don't suddenly appear, they wait. Hidden in plain sight, for years, until one day, you realize they were there all along. But here's the terrifying part. What if Vecna himself was never the real villain? What if something even older has been hiding in the Upside Down since the beginning? And that's exactly where our story continues. To be continued, Part 2. What if Vecna was never the real villain?